Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club Friday Forum. City Club is where civic-minded people come together to make both Portland and Oregon a great place to live, work, and play. I'm Don Williams, the past president of City Club, and I'd like to welcome members and guests alike, those of you attending today at the Sentinel Hotel, those who are listening on OPB radio, and watching on Portland Community Media. Today, Dr. Monica Wehby, candidate for U.S. Senator, will be our speaker. But first, a few announcements. The generous support of City Club's corporate and media partners enables us to give the state's best civic programs week after week. I'd like to thank our media partner, Oregon Business Magazine. And our current Friday Forum sponsors are AARP, Barron Liebman, Iberdrola Renewables, Perkins Coie, Portland General Electric, and Providence Health and Services. Please join me in giving them a hand for their support and commitment to the City Club mission. Join us next Friday, that's Halloween, and the program will be entitled Spooky Campaign Tales, a roast of the 2014 campaign season. Rumor has it that the panelists will be dressed in political consultant costumes. The Friday Forum on November 17th is a partnership with All Hands Raise. It's the Raising Our Hands, Raising the Bar Summit. And note that this important program on youth and education will not be held at the Sentinel Hotel, but be at Portland State University and start at noon. You can learn more about City Club events, purchase tickets, and more importantly, become a member at our website, which is pdxcityclub.org. And we'll be live tweeting today's program. You can follow along and join the conversation using hashtag PDXCityClub. November 4th, the first Tuesday after the first Monday of November, it's a date set by Congress in 1845 for the general election. So in just 11 days, voters in 16 states will travel to their polling places, and a deadline will toll for voters in Oregon and the other vote-by-mail states to return their ballots. But wait, it's a midterm presidential election, so will there be a good turnout? Well, let's look at the Oregon voter registration statistics briefly to find out. More people are now registered for the non-presidential general election than any comparable election in Oregon history. To be specific, there's about 120,000 more registered voters than a similar election in 2012. And of those 2.2 million registered voters, 832,000 are Democrats, 658,000 Republicans, and there are also more non-affiliated voters than any other time in Oregon history, about 32%. With 7 statewide ballot measures, a gubernatorial election, and a Senate race, it's a critical day for our state. But nationally, it's also a crucial election. 36 Senate seats are up for election. Republicans currently have a sizable majority in the House of Representatives, but in the Senate, it's much closer. Democrats outnumber Republicans 53-45, with 2 independents in the mix. If the Republicans take 6 seats currently held by Democrats and retain control of their 15 contested seats, they gain control of the upper chamber. So the Oregon Senate race is very important. Now, City Club invited both Jeff Merkley and Monica Wehby to debate at today's forum, and in line with past City Club tradition, if one of the candidates declines, the other has the stage. We're pleased to introduce Dr. Monica Wehby. She is a mother of 4 and the director of pediatric neurosurgery at Randall Children's Hospital in Portland. The granddaughter of a Lebanese immigrant, Dr. Wehby was the first woman to graduate from her medical school program in neurosurgery. A leader in her field, she has been involved in healthcare and medical policy for nearly 30 years. She is former president of both the Oregon Medical Association and the Portland Medical Society. Dr. Wehby's unique leadership roles lent her expertise to help create opportunity for Oregon's working and middle-class families. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Monica Wehby.
Hi, thank all of you for coming. I'm glad you're here to hear me talk. I appreciate everyone coming. I'm disappointed that Senator Merkley declined the invitation. We had such a good time in Medford a couple weeks ago, but I'll just have to speak for him, I guess. A little over a year ago, I was standing in my kitchen around the island talking with my 4 children. I have 3 boys and a girl. They're all teenagers. And I was talking with them about whether or not I should run for Senate. And they said to me, "Mom, why? Why would you leave a job that you trained until you're 35 years old to do and everybody loves you, to take on a job where people say all sorts of mean things about you?" And boy, do they. If my kids believed even 10% of the stuff that my opponent says about me, even they wouldn't like me. But thankfully, Merkley's Monica bears no resemblance to the real Monica. But I do understand why so many good people won't run for office. And I think that's a big problem with politics. When I talked to some of my friends about running, some of my neurosurgical colleagues, they thought I should scan my own brain. I must say it is totally different from what I do in the past. What I've done as a pediatric neurosurgeon is deal with truth, reality, fact. This is a little bit different. I remember talking with one of my girlfriends who ran for Senate in California, and I called her. I said, "Oh my goodness, you can't believe what they're saying." I said, I can't believe it. And I said, "They just make this stuff up." And she said, "Oh, Monica, politics is a totally fact-free zone." So as I was struggling to try to explain to my children why I thought I would run for Senate, I was trying to explain my motivation to them. And the best way I could do it is talking about a little boy that I took care of years ago, a little boy with a brain tumor, and he did really well. We took out his tumor. He came back and gave me a thank you note. And on that thank you note it said, "If we're not here to make life better for one another, then what's the point?" So I figured I could either keep heading back down to my OR, fret and complain to all the poor nurses and anesthesiologists that have to listen to me day after day, or I could roll up my sleeves and get to work and try to make a difference. I'm not a career politician, thankfully. I'm a doctor. I'm used to looking people in the eye and telling them the truth, even when it's not easy. And the truth is that 70% of Americans think we're headed on the wrong track. But I don't need a poll to tell me that. I hear that every day from my patients. There's almost a palpable sense of anxiety, frustration, and fear. And as a doctor, you get to share people's greatest times of weakness and greatest times of strength. And there's nothing more inspiring to me than when I see the tremendous love that people have for their children. How many times I've had parents tell me, I just wish I could take this illness. I just wish I could take this from my child. Now, my opponent would have you believe that this race is about me, my campaign, my supporters, but what it's really about is about the people of Oregon that he's forgotten. It's about 6 years of lost jobs and opportunities for the people of Oregon. My opponent will tell you that he is the champion of the middle class. But the truth is, since he's been senator, our middle class family incomes have dropped $3,000 per year. Working families have seen their income drop every year in the last 6 years. Childhood poverty has increased to 23%. 1 in 5 Oregonians are on food stamps. We're one of 6 states that have 20% or more on food stamps. In fact, more people in Oregon went on food stamps than found a job in the last 6 years. Unemployment in our state is a full percentage point above the national average. Some areas like Medford that we were just at, it's 3 points higher. It's 9% in Medford. And that doesn't even include the people who've just given up and stopped looking for a job. Our labor force participation, our workforce participation in Oregon is the lowest it's ever been since they started recording it in the 70s. Now, why is that? That's because Senator Merkley went to Washington and forgot about Oregon. He started supporting policies that are so extreme, stood with this party 98% of the time, and lost touch with working families back here in Oregon. And he's been especially bad for women. Almost 40% of women have been searching for a job for over 6 months. More women than men have lost their jobs in the Obama-Merkley economy. Oregon's women make 72 cents on the dollar for what a man makes. And why not? Senator Merkley set a bad example. He pays women in his office significantly less than their male counterparts with the same title. Women have lost their doctors with Obamacare. They're suffering because a health insurance cancellation letter may cause a stay-at-home mom to worry about meeting health care costs for her family. They're suffering for a poor economy that forces a mom to go back to work or to take a second job so that the family can make ends meet. Suffering from a poor job market that makes a recent graduate unable to pay her college loans. Suffering from tax code and regulations that make it impossible for an aspiring young female entrepreneur to get started. Senator Merkley promised women that if they liked their health plan and they liked their doctor, they could keep it, long after he knew it wasn't true, and continues to support the failed policies of Washington and President Obama. And President Obama just told us a couple weeks ago that those policies, every single one of them, are on the ballot in November. In Oregon, those policies go under the name of Senator Jeff Merkley. But do you know who loves my opponent's policies? Then you must be either rich and well-connected. 95% of the new wealth in the last 6 years has gone to the top 1%. He believes that the answer to everything is another massive federal bureaucracy that dictates, mandates, regulates, controls every single aspect of our lives. But look where those policies have gotten us. Less jobs, more subsidies, less opportunity, and more dependency on government. And what happens when you make someone dependent? You rob them of their potential. When you make someone dependent, when you become dependent on someone or something, you give them control of your life. It's time we took back control of our life. It's time we stopped growing Washington, D.C.'s economy and started growing our own. So as your senator, What would I do to make your life better? First of all, I would enact policies that get our economy growing to provide jobs. Over the past year, as I've traveled all around the state, I've talked to hundreds of business owners, and I always ask them, what is it that is making it so difficult for you to grow your business? And they always say to me, uncertainty. I say, uncertainty about what? Uncertainty about regulations, taxes, and mandates, like the granddaddy of them all, the ACA, Obamacare, which is the biggest tax hike in history. I think we need to start giving our businesses some certainty so that they know what the playing field's going to be like, so that they're comfortable and confident that they can grow their businesses. Growing your business takes risk, personal risk, financial risk. People need to have the certainty to do that. I'll rein in out of control government agencies that have bureaucrats strangling our small businesses like a noose around their neck. Regulations are costing jobs and raising our energy prices. The EPA regulations that our absent senator supports will raise your energy prices $1,200 per year. And there are a lot of working and middle-class families that can't afford an additional $100 per month. Regulations that our absent senator supports have also made it extremely difficult for our timber counties to harvest timber. It's been devastating for those counties. We have 5 counties, timber counties, that are near bankruptcy now. He won't even work with Senator Wyden on his ONC legislation to try to get our timber families back to work. I remember as I traveled around the state talking with one of our millwrights, and he told me he would stand out in the middle of the forest looking at all the trees and see that the logs were being shipped in from Canada. And he said, you know, I feel like a man starving to death in the middle of a grocery store. The environment doesn't have to be the enemy of the economy. We just need a balanced approach. We need some common sense solutions. Imagine what it would be like if our government was actually an ally and not an adversary. We all want the same things. We all want a healthy economy and a healthy environment. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. We just have to be able to talk to each other about it, not dig in our heels and bang our heads together. Regulations on our financial industry make it difficult for our local banks and credit unions to make loans to our small businesses and entrepreneurs. You know how many pages is in Dodd-Frank? 2,300. Tens of thousands of pages of regulations. They're estimating it's going to be 35,000. How are you supposed to follow that? How are our small businesses supposed to, our small banks supposed to follow those regulations? You need a legion of tax attorneys and CPAs and lawyers to do that. The Volcker rule, which my opponent is so proud of, originally was 4 pages. You know how long it ended up? How big it was when it finished? 963 pages. Even Volcker didn't support it at that point. He thought it had just turned into such a monstrosity. I think that our banks all have to have a level playing field. You remember the Wall Street bailouts? Do you remember in 2008 when Senator Merkley was harassing Gordon Smith about this? You know, I can't believe you bailed out Wall Street. One of his first votes as a senator was to again bail out Wall Street with another $350 billion. I think it's important that we all play by the same rules, that Washington, D.C. doesn't pick winners and losers. I would also think it's important that we reform our tax code so that it's simple and fair, eliminating loopholes that only the wealthy can manipulate and benefit from. We need to keep more money in everybody's pocket. We know how to spend our money better than the government does. Take Cover Oregon, what was that, $300 million down the drain for nothing? We know what to do with our money better than the government does. We have the highest business tax in the world. We make it difficult for our businesses to reinvest, grow their economy, hire more people. We need to provide an attractive environment for our job owners and our job creators, not vilify these people that are trying to invest and grow our economy. Second, I would focus on educating our children so that our workers can be competitive. We've got to be certain that everybody has the opportunities to succeed. Our children shouldn't be trapped in failing schools just because of their zip code. I believe in school choice, charter schools, vocational schools, public-private partnerships, things that allow our workers to train. I was just talking with our IBEW people earlier about some of the programs that they have that allow people to come do an apprenticeship and train. Our country should strive to guarantee equal opportunity, not necessarily equal outcome. We just need to be certain that everybody has the goals and tools to achieve their American dream. Third, I would work to reduce the size and influence of big government in our lives and pass a balanced budget amendment. Here, the senator and I really couldn't be more different. He thinks big government is the answer to everything. I think big government is part of the problem. Instead of a big, massive, bloated bureaucracy, we need to streamline government where it works more like a business. Our national debt is $18 trillion, almost. $140,000 for every family, $55,000 per person. This is generational theft. This is a war on our youth. In 2008, Senator Merkley stood and debated Gordon Smith and said to him, "Do you realize that our children are going to have to pay back this debt that you're running up?" In the last 6 years, he's almost doubled it. He voted for 4 of the largest deficits in the U.S. history. Within a decade, Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare are going to consume 50% of the federal budget. We have got, at some point, to have an adult conversation about this. We've got to respect our seniors who have contributed into these plans. We've got to protect them for our seniors, but we've got to have a conversation about this, or these programs are going to become insolvent. They won't be there for any of us. I mean, I would like to have it available in a few years when I need it. And we need to get these programs where they are not insolvent. We borrow about 40 cents on every dollar that we spend. We need to balance our budget like we do at home. Fourth, I'd help the country transition into a healthcare system that would actually work. I'm a doctor who's been involved in health policy for 30 years. I made some ads, back in 2009, talking about some of the problems that we were going to see with the healthcare law, with Obamacare. I tried to get those changes made before it went through, but unfortunately we weren't able to, and now we're dealing with a lot of that now. We were promised that if we liked our plan, we could keep it. Long after our senator knew that that wasn't true. They knew several months after this law passed that millions of people were going to be thrown off of their health care plan, 150,000 here. Obamacare is unworkable, unaffordable, and unfair. There are some good things in there. There are some good things in there. Some insurance reforms, expansion of health care coverage. We all want everybody to have affordable, high-quality health care. But the problem is that nobody read the bill. A lot of unintended consequences. You know how big that bill is? Anybody? 2,700 pages? 30,000 pages of regulations? 20 to 30,000 pages of regulations? If you stack them up, it's 6 feet tall of regulations. When we started out with this law, 250 million people had insurance, 50 million did not. Now, $2.7 trillion later, we're still going to have 30 million people without health care insurance. We spent $80,000 a person to insure those people. Not only is it bad for health care, it's a huge drag on the economy. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that we're going to lose 2.5 million job equivalents as a result of this law. How many of you out here are veterans? We've got to reform the VA. It's absolutely shameful what happened to our veterans at the VA. I think we're on the wrong track, or on the right track, trying to get that fixed now, allowing our veterans to go to facilities that are closer to home or get care if they can't get treated right away. But I do think it's terrible. In 2008, we knew this was an issue, but nothing was done till the scandal of people dying on waiting list. Finally, this election is about safety and security. As a mom, I'm worried about the things that I see going on with ISIS, with terrorists beheading people on TV, with Ebola coming to our country. Senator Merkley in Washington have no plan or strategy to keep us safe and secure. We need a plan to deal with terrorists who want to do us harm. And we need a strategy to keep Ebola from coming to the United States. That's why I called for a travel ban of non-essential travel from Western African countries. You know, it makes no sense not to do it. Ebola has an incubation time, which means you get infected and you carry it around for up to 3 weeks. So you can be infected like the doctor we just heard about in New York. You can be infected and not even know it. Get back here, and then you start to get symptoms. Then you've got to go back and try to find all the contacts. That's the way it spreads, because you carry it and you don't know you have it. And he's a doctor. That tells you how dangerous this virus is. It's very contagious. But our senator has been silent on both the ISIS issue and the Ebola issue. We need people who are going to be leaders and not just rubber stamp things. We've got to reclaim our role as a world leader, because when there's a leadership vacuum, somebody much less benevolent than us is going to fill it. We need a coherent foreign policy, not a reactive foreign policy. Seems we're always caught by surprise lately. Our allies don't trust us. Our enemies don't fear us. We've got to be seen as reliable, trustworthy, and strong with a consistent guiding principle. So how do we get back on track? We get back on track by changing the people that we send to Washington, D.C. We need to elect people who are actually held accountable. When parents talk to me in the pre-surgery area and hand me their baby to take back to the operating room, and they say, "Dr. Wehby, take care of my baby," I'm responsible for that little life, that little Oregonian. I can't blame somebody else if there's a problem. I can't blame anesthesia, although surgeons like to all the time. Can't always blame anesthesia. You can't blame the nurse. You can't blame anybody. It's my responsibility. All of us have to take responsibility for what we do every day. But you know what? We have gotten so used to dishonesty and incompetence from our government that we are not even surprised by it anymore when it happens. Look at Benghazi, NSA, Fast and Furious, VA, IRS. Now, Senator Merkley has a special place in his heart for IRS. He was one of 7 senators who put that letter together that he sent to the IRS, asking the IRS to investigate people based on their political beliefs. I don't know if Oregons would be very proud to know that their junior senator used a federal agency to try to silence his political opponents. That's abuse of power. But that's what career politicians do. They'll do anything to hold on to power. That's why I support term limits. I think that if I get elected, I'll go and stay for 2 terms. You know, they didn't put term limits in our Constitution because they didn't think anybody would want to go stay for 2 years, for more than, 1 or 2 terms. Everybody had their own jobs. They had their farms, their businesses. They didn't want to go serve. They said, all right, Frank, it's your turn, you go. And I think that is part of the problem, is that we get people there and they make a career out of this. But what we need are people from different backgrounds. We need doctors. We got a lot of lawyers, school teachers, business people, people that have different gifts that they bring to the Senate that they can use to make a difference and add that. Because if you don't look at an issue from all sides, if you're just in a big echo chamber and everybody sees things the same way, you get broadsided with problems. Second, we need to elect people who will put common sense over ideology. As a doctor, I'm trained to make decisions based in a logical way. Very logical, not ideological. And I also know how to work with other people. As president of the Oregon Medical Association, we're basically a little microcosm of Oregon. And we have to be able to work with all different people. People have all different interests and backgrounds. And I realize as well that I don't know everything. That's why God made specialists, so that you have people from different backgrounds that know different things. Because if you can't work with other people, your patient can die. I know that it's possible to find common ground without sacrificing your principles. Our absent senator was rated the most extreme senator in the Senate by National Journal. Problem is, when you're on one extreme or the other, whether the right or the left, you're never in the room when the problems are solved. Because everybody figures that you're too extreme. You don't have any common sense. So why are they even going to bother to talk to you? We need to elect people that will put Oregon and America above their own party, special interest, or personal career. It's time that we stop all this petty bickering in Washington, D.C. Our differences should be a strength, not a weakness. We need to work together to chart a new path. We need to be able to do what's best for our country and for our state, not what's best for our party. Take Senator Merkley, for example. He has spent the last 6 years doing exactly what his party told him to do. He voted party line 98% of the time. He must have forgotten where he's from, because Oregonians, very independent-minded. We don't agree with anybody 98% of the time. It's not who we are. Very independent-minded people. Senator Merkley is the poster boy for the worst polarization this country has ever seen. He's rubber-stamped all the policies for Obama. But the fact is that this election isn't about Republicans and Democrats. No side has a monopoly on all the right answers. There are good answers on both sides. We just have to be able to talk to each other and be able to solve our problems. Our greatest enemies are those that want to divide us among political affiliation, class warfare, sexual orientation, gender, race. A house divided against itself can't stand. People that divide us are our greatest enemies. You know, over the past year, as I've gone around the state, I've talked to thousands, probably tens of thousands of people in rooms like this. And I always ask them, Do you think your children are going to have the same opportunity that you had growing up? And I will tell you, I can count on one hand the people that have raised their hands. And I think about my granddaddy that came over from Lebanon, started driving a delivery truck, worked hard, saved his money, developed a truck line, then finally warehouse and shipping company. He always taught us that if you worked hard, you could be whatever you wanted to be, but you had to work hard. You had to sacrifice to do it. He always wanted one of his kids to be a doctor, and none of them ever were, but he was awfully proud when his granddaughter was finally one. But I think that it's important that we keep that hope, that American dream alive, what drives people to come to this country. And then I ask people about security. Do you feel more secure now than you did 6 years ago? More secure in your retirement, the ability to pay your mortgage, the ability to pay for your gas? Do you feel more secure with your child's education, your health care, our national security? They tell us that this is the new normal, that we're a country in decline, and that we just have to face it, that that's where we are, that things aren't going to get better. Are you kidding me? That's not who we are as Americans. When I talk to people about this race, they always ask me, has it been worth it? And when I think about all the moms who cradle their little baby, the dads that take that little baby with colic and pace the floor at night, trying to get them to sleep, teaching your little toddler to walk, getting that kid potty trained, getting them through grammar school, teaching them to read and write, getting them to high school, teaching them how to drive, taking them to baseball games, helping them get a date for homecoming, helping them when they break up with their girlfriend, getting them out to graduate through high school, then have them sign up and go away to a foreign country to fight for this country and never come home again. I think it's worth it. When I think about what people have sacrificed because they love this country, I can take a few little verbal assaults, a few little bullets, when there are people that are taking real bullets for people that they don't even know. That's who we are as Americans. And here we are now at a crossroads. Two very different paths that we can choose from. The first one is a path that my opponent, Senator Merkley, advocates for, the path that's got us where we are today. A path of partisan fighting, name-calling, a path where professional politicians vote for laws they don't read or don't understand and leave us suffering the consequences. A path of one-size-fits-all government where more and more decisions are made by bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. to suit their interest and needs, not to suit ours back here at home in Oregon. It's a path that has led to less opportunity, more need for welfare, less chance to achieve the American dream, and more dependency on government. You'll find me on the second path, a path that's rooted in trust and belief in individuals and families, a path where government is an ally and not an adversary, a path where common sense is more important than partisanship, a path that puts Oregon first and Washington last, a path that will ensure that American Oregon's best dreams are yet to come. This isn't about me. It's not about you. It's about our children It's about our future, and it's about our country. Let's take control of our lives. Let's change direction. Because together we can do this. We can start dreaming big again. Because if we're not here to make life better for one another, then what's the point? I ask for your vote and your support before or on November 4th. Thank you.
Now, if you have a written question on an index card, please hold it up high so it can be collected, and we have quite a few already, and in fact, one question that was emailed before the program, which is also an option you have on an ongoing basis. We'll now take questions from the floor. As always, we invite members to the microphone, and asking questions is a benefit of City Club membership, which is open to anybody. Before asking your question, identify yourself as a City Club member. You're limited to one question, and please make it succinct. If your question goes beyond 30 seconds, I will flash the infamous graphic to you, and by definition, your question then becomes a political speech. As such, the City Club Sergeant at Arms will escort you to the Secretary of State's office, and you'll be registered as a political committee. Okay, first question.
Thank you. Eric Zimmerman, Board of Governors, City Club. Ms. Wehby, on your website, on your page about foreign policy, you describe your position on foreign policy only as a strong military. As one who commanded troops across Iraq, I can tell you we were not a rolling band of diplomats in Humvees. And so what is your vision for diplomatic solutions in foreign policy versus a strong military only, as your webpage says?
Well, I think the point of having a strong military is that you have to have something to, I believe in the philosophy of, carrying a big stick and walking softly. Because if people don't trust us and don't think that we'll follow through on what they say, we end up with a vacuum in leadership. And when I talk to a lot of our military and a lot of our friends from different countries overseas, people have lost respect for the United States. When they see that we have backed away from our responsibility as a world leader, when we make threats that we don't follow through on, when we abandon our allies or across the ocean and we're not reliable, I think that is a huge problem for us. I think having a strong military makes us a credible threat. And because if we can just make the talk and not do anything, why would anybody listen to anything we say?
Jean Magmer, a City Club member. As a mother and a physician who saves children's lives, how do you feel about the business and the military saying that climate change is a threat to our economy and to our national security? And how would you vote on issues to regulate fossil fuel when much of your money comes from the oil industry, or much of your campaign funds?
Well, first of all, about that, we don't have any control over who comes into our races. That's something that's done without any say on my part. But I will say that as far as carbon emissions and pollution, I support the Clean Air Act. I think we do need regulations to keep our environment clean and safe for our children. I think that that's very important. I don't think at this point, when our economy is struggling tremendously right now, that we should be adding additional regulations at a time when things are so difficult. Right, those regulations are going to cost $1,200 to $1,700 per family. And that's very difficult for a lot of our working families to handle right now. It's estimated it would cost hundreds of thousands of jobs, when right now every job is very important. We've had tremendous success with our Clean Air Act, and with our EPA has done a great job. Our air and water is cleaner now than it's been in decades, and I think that's excellent. And I think we do need to continue to pursue different energy options. But I do think that we have to be careful about passing regulations that are going to make it so difficult for Oregon families at a time when so many are struggling right now. So I do support our Clean Air Act. I just don't think we should be adding additional regulations at a time when things are so difficult.
I'm going to read one of the questions that came in by email. Dr. Wehby, you have made Senator Merkley's voting record supporting positions taken by the Democratic caucus a major issue for your campaign, and have promised to vote more independently. Please tell us at least 3 important bills that have been voted on in the Senate over the last 4 years on which you would have voted against the position taken by the Republican caucus.
Oh gosh, I have to think about particular bills. I will tell you that I would support immigration reform. I think that we do need immigration reform. But I can tell you, I can't list you particular bills, but I can list particular philosophies where I do differ from my party. One is on marriage equality. Another is on, I believe, that regarding the pro-life issue, that this is a personal decision between a woman and her faith, a woman and her family, a woman and her physician, not a woman and the federal government. I don't think the government should be involved in our personal and private lives. So that's, I think, 3 different areas. Yeah.
Mike Litt, City Club member. In the 6 years Lyndon Johnson was majority leader in the 1950s, he dealt with only 1 filibuster. But with Mitch McConnell leading the Republicans, they've used the filibuster more than 500 times to block equal pay legislation, the American Jobs Act, and even an increase in the minimum wage. That has essentially paralyzed the Senate. However, recently, Senator Merkley led the successful effort to stop the use of the filibuster in the case of confirmation votes for most presidential nominees. What is your opinion of his effort?
I will tell you that when I talk with a lot of the senators on both sides of the aisle about this, that is one of the things that they dislike the most about Senator Merkley, because they see this as disrupting, they're changing the rules of the Senate to a point where a simple majority overrides the minority. I mean, it only takes 51 votes now, simple majority overriding the minority. And when that happens, that the Senate is supposed to be a deliberative body where you're supposed to talk about issues and come to some consensus. But when you make it where it's just a simple majority overriding the minority, then that ability to discuss things is gone. And I always like to laugh in the debates when we talk about this, is that he's going to regret that in a few months when they are in the minority, except for the fact that he won't be there because I will be there.
Hi, I'm Joyce DeMonin, City Club member, and Dr. Wehby, I'd like to thank you for being here today. Social Security accounts for 131,000 jobs here in the state of Oregon and is fully funded until the year 2033. Additionally, it keeps thousands of Oregonian seniors and children out of poverty each year. What would you do to protect these valuable programs that people have paid for during a lifetime of work to maintain them for future generations?
I think it's very important that we start to address these issues. And Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, as we mentioned in the talk earlier, there are, these programs are all on the path to insolvency. We've got, as our baby boomers age, we've got less people paying in now than taking out of these systems, or, it's starting to shift the amount of people that support each retiree or, each Medicare recipient. And so we've got to find a way to do this. People are also living longer. All of these things are changing, and we've not addressed these issues. There are all sorts of ways that we need to start assessing these systems, and everything has to be on the table. I mean, we have to look at things like means testing. We have to look at eligibility ages. We have to look at, the amount of payouts. These are all discussions that everybody keeps kicking down the road. They keep kicking that can down the road, and because it's not a popular thing to do. But Medicare, Social Security, Senator Merkley passed one of the biggest cuts to Medicare in history, $716 billion. We've got one of the highest percentages of people on Medicare Advantage in the country, 43%. He had 3 opportunities to block those cuts and did not. So there are issues that we really need to address, and we need to sit with actuaries and accountants and figure out a way to do this, or else these problems are going to become insolvent, or these programs are going to be insolvent.
Next question.
Chris Andre, City Club member. Dr. Wehby, it's wonderful to have you here today, and we've all listened intently to what you have to say. My question, though, it concerns timber counties. We no longer protect the whalebone industry because we're not wearing whalebone corsets. Trees now, you as a scientist should know that trees are more valuable standing than hacked to pieces and shipped off to Japan. You smile and you think this is probably amusing. In fact, the air belongs to all of us. Timber might belong to timber companies. Why cannot the so-called timber counties move on, find better paying jobs that are less dangerous and that look towards the future, not the past?
Well, timber is our greatest natural resource here in the state. And I think that that we have to keep things in balance. I think right now things are out of balance. Even Senator Wyden has come up with plans that can help with our ONC timberlands, where we can have a balanced approach where people can make a living in the woods as they've done for many generations, and have the ability to have excellent, good-paying jobs. These are very good-paying jobs in the timber industry. They're not minimum wage jobs. And that gives people quite a sense of pride to be able to have their job and work and provide for their family. And so, I understand there's plenty of wilderness and timber land for all of us. We don't have to exclude one or the other. I mean, timber here is like a crop in some areas, and so you can balance this. We can protect our areas, our beautiful areas. We can protect our wilderness, and we can also allow timber harvest. You have to be able to have a balance. That's the way people get along. There's give and take.
Another question from the floor. Do you support legalization of marijuana? Why or why not?
Ooh, well, I've got 4 teenagers. As a pediatric neurosurgeon, I care a lot about the developing brain, and I do have concern about marijuana. It's been linked to psychiatric illness. It's been linked to a drop in IQ of up to 8 points, and I don't know how many of us can spare an extra 8 points in our IQ. It's been linked directly to an increase in motor vehicle accidents. Makes it very difficult for our law enforcement agencies to know when someone's intoxicated. It's not like alcohol where you can just do a breathalyzer test and tell. So that makes it more difficult. And I think, being a scientist, that the smartest thing to do is wait and see what happens in Colorado and Washington and see how things play out there. I've talked to some people in Colorado, and they're having a lot of difficulty with it. But I think for us, the smart thing would be wait and see what happens there.
Leslie Johnson, City Club member. I want to echo people's appreciation, Dr. Wehby, for you accepting the club's invitation. It's important that we keep having these discussions. I'd like to get some understanding about your position about a couple of the big legal issues that are likely to drive a lot of the lawmaking in Congress in the next few sessions. Citizens United and Hobby Lobby. Do you believe that corporations are people and they ought to get personal freedoms and protections like free speech, and that closely held corporations, no matter how big they are monetarily, also get things like religious freedoms and can have different relationships with their employees than other employers do in order to do things like impact access to birth control in company insurance plans?
Well, I think, let's see, you have Citizens United and Hobby Lobby. Citizens United, I think it's important that we protect our First Amendment rights of free speech, but I also think it's very important that we have a level playing field. I think if unions and Sierra Club and corporations all should have the same rules to play by. And so I think that as long as I think there has to be a level playing field. And then as far as Hobby Lobby, I think it's very important that we, as women, have access to birth control. I think that that's key and is an important part of our health care. With Hobby Lobby, you know, I didn't have a problem with it because people still had access to birth control through another third party. So there was still access of, you know, 16 of the 20 types of birth control. And even though the other 4 types, they still could have access through a third party. I would never want to do anything that would put women's health at risk, but this seemed to strike a good balance between the right of religious freedom and the need for women's health care and access to birth control.
We have time for one more question. Muriel?
Dr. Wehby, some of us would like to know what your plan is to help the working poor families afford good health insurance coverage without having to pay for a deductible that's greater than their weekly salary, much less their monthly salary.
Yeah, it's a real problem. You know, the part of the problem that we've gotten into with the health care law is that it mandated what types of plans people had to buy. And it required that people buy these big, huge essential benefits packages, which are big bells and whistles policies, which make it more expensive for everybody, which has driven up the premiums, driven up the deductibles. You know, a lot of the people that were added on the insurance rolls were Medicaid, and they just expanded Medicaid from 100% of the poverty line up to 138% of the poverty line. And that allowed a lot more people to be covered. The problem is that with the health care law, there was so much disruption of everything else. If we wanted to just raise the Medicaid level, we should have just raised the Medicaid level without having to disrupt everything else.
Okay. We've run out of broadcast time for further questions, and we'll have to stop for the day. Before we stop, however, I would like to remind you to remember to vote. Yesterday at 9 a.m., only 9.6% of the ballots had been returned to the county election offices, according to the Secretary of State's office. So please get your stamps and vote by mail. As we close for today, we want to offer special thanks for Dr. Wehby showing up at City Club, and thank you for your address.
Thank you all for having me.